They buried her up to the neck at dawn, under a sky that didn't care. The sand was cold at first, clinging to her skin in damp clumps, but as the sun crept up over the ridge, it baked against her throat like iron. Mara didn't scream, not out loud. She had wasted her voice the night before, begging, cursing, pleading to deaf ears and turned backs. Her lips were cracked, her cheeks crusted with a mix of tears and blood, and her throat stung from thirst and rage. Above her, the empty sky offered nothing, not a cloud, not a breeze, not mercy. She could still see the boots. A line of them, her husband's sharp-toed pair, scuffed from kicking her into the pit, the sheriff's spit-polished leathers glinting in the morning sun, and the preacher's worn brown soles, trembling just a little, though his voice had been firm when he declared her fruitless, a curse upon the land. She'd watched the townsfolk gnawed like cattle, the women clutching their children, the men silent in their shame. No one spoke up. Not one. Mara had been married 3 years. She'd known heartbreak, yes, but she'd never known this kind of quiet murder, the kind where no one pulls the trigger, but everyone helps dig the grave. The wind whispered over the ridge, stirring the edge of her bonnet where it still clung to her tangled hair. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed, sharp and impatient. They'd left her water just out of reach. A final mockery. If she turned her head just right, she could see the tin cup shimmering against the sand, perhaps 20 paces away. Close enough to hope. Far enough to break. Time passed slowly. Minutes dragged into hours, and the sun climbed with cruel deliberation. Her skin began to sting. Flies buzzed around her nose, dipping to taste the salt of her sweat. Her mouth hung open, but her tongue was too thick to beg again. Her thoughts wandered, back to when she was still Mara Lorne, a girl of 16 with a braid down her back and dreams of naming her first colt. Back before the miscarriages. Back before the second, one bled her near dry, and the town began to whisper. They had always watched her. Even before the wedding, she had something they didn't understand, some fire behind her eyes, a way of meeting a man's gaze without flinching. Her mother used to say she was born with thunder in her bones. Maybe that was the problem. Thunder didn't sit quietly in pews or keep its head bowed. The sound of hooves snapped her awake. Not a mirage. Not this time. She blinked into the light. Dust rose in slow clouds beyond the hill. 4 riders. At first she thought maybe they were sent to finish the job, but then she saw how they moved, not in tight formation, not with purpose or uniform. Loose, like wolves. One of them broke off from the group and began to descend toward her. Her breath caught. The rider was tall, lean, and sat his horse like he was born in the saddle. His duster flapped in the wind, and a wide-brimmed hat shadowed most of his face. He rode slow, cautious, like he wasn't quite sure if she was real. She tried to lift her head. Her neck ached. Her voice croaked out like sandpaper. "You come to watch me die?" The man dismounted with a grunt. He approached on foot, boots crunching the dry grass. His face, when it finally came into view, was not cruel or curious, just tired, weathered, like driftwood left too long in the sun. "Looks like they got a head start on that," he said, squatting beside her. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to spit, but she had no spit left. "I'm Elias," he said after a moment, "and you look like you need digging out. You're not from around here." "No, that's why I'm still breathing." She closed her eyes. "Don't waste your time. They'll come back." "They always do," he murmured, "but I don't mind company." He stood and walked back to his horse. She tried to turn her head to see if he was leaving. Her heart hammered in her chest. But then he returned with a canteen and a small rusted shovel. The water hit her tongue like rain on scorched earth. She gulped until she choked, and he pulled it away gently, his hands surprisingly careful. He began to dig, small scoops at first, careful not to nick her skin. "You must have pissed someone off mighty bad," he said after a while. "I didn't give them a son." "That'll do it." Her lip curled. "My husband couldn't grow a beard, let alone a child." Elias chuckled. "Just once a rough sound like gravel. Sounds like he needed burying, not you." The sand was stubborn, packed hard around her ribs, her hips, her legs. As he dug, she began to feel her limbs again, Pins and needles at first, then fire. She clenched her teeth and groaned as sensation returned. "Hold on," he said quietly. "You're almost through." She didn't thank him. She didn't cry. She bit down and waited, and when he finally pulled her free, she collapsed into his arms like wet cloth. For a long moment neither spoke. Then, "Why?" she whispered. "Why help me?" He looked off toward the hills, where the others waited. "I've seen enough people die for nothing. You looked like you had some fight left." He hoisted her up and carried her to his horse. Her legs dangled uselessly, numb and bruised. He mounted behind her, arms braced firm around her waist. His coat smelled of leather, smoke, and dust. "They'll come after me," she said. "Let 'em try." They rode into the late sun, two silhouettes against the blood-orange sky. The wind cooled the sweat on her face, lifted her hair. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, she felt something stir inside her. Not hope, not yet, but a spark. Something that might become fire if she fed it. The ride was long. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, full of unspoken things. She sensed he wasn't a man of words, but not from ignorance. He carried his quiet like armor. "You one of them?" she asked eventually. "One of the four?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Used to be." "Why'd you leave?" "They changed." "Or you did." Another pause. Then, "Both." The terrain turned rockier, the moon rising behind them. She leaned against his chest, too weak to hold herself upright. She could feel the beat of his heart, slow and steady. "You got a name?" he asked. She thought of the town, of the people who left her in the dirt like garbage. Her husband's name, which she no longer wanted. The preacher's judgment. The sheriff's silence. "Mara," she said. "Just Mara." "All right, Mara. You rest now. I'll keep you safe." Her eyes fluttered shut. For the first time in days, she believed it. Back in the town, the sheriff was already stirring. The preacher's hands trembled as he lit a lantern. And in a house that still reeked of roses and bitterness, Mara's ex-husband sharpened a knife. Vultures circled overhead. Not all of them flew on wings. And somewhere in the dark beyond the firelight, destiny took one step closer. The desert wind howled through the gulch like it carried unfinished prayers. Elias kept the pace steady, mindful of the woman slumped in front of him. Mara hadn't spoken since dusk, her weight resting heavier with each mile. He could feel her shivering despite the blanket he'd thrown over her shoulders. Not from cold, the night was warm enough, but from something deeper. Trauma didn't always scream. Sometimes it went quiet. Sometimes it curled inward and waited. He glanced back. No dust, no riders yet. But that didn't mean they weren't coming. His horse crested the rise and paused. Below, nestled in a valley choked with brush and scraggly cottonwoods, stood the remains of the Row Ranch. What was once a proud sprawl of barns, fencing, and pasture had withered into half-rotted beams and leaning porch posts. The main house still stood, barely, its roof patched with tarps and old tin. A few chickens scattered when they rode in. One looked up, squawked indignantly, then returned to pecking the dirt. Elias dismounted first, careful to steady Mara as she slid off. She tried to stand, knees trembling, then crumpled to the ground. "I've got it," he said, lifting her with surprising gentleness. She didn't protest, just clung to his coat and let him carry her inside. The house smelled of dust and age, the kind of place where the walls remembered arguments. He laid her on a worn settee near the hearth, then stirred the embers until they flared. A kettle went on the hook, filled with rainwater he'd hauled from the cistern. Mara opened her eyes as the fire warmed the room. She didn't look grateful. She looked cautious, like an animal unsure if the new trap was just a different shape. "You live here alone?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah." "No family?" "Used to." She didn't push. He appreciated that. He pulled a chair closer and sat down across from her, elbows resting on his knees. "Are you going to tell me what happened? I thought you said you didn't care." "Didn't say that. I just don't need details to know wrong when I see it." Her lips twisted, halfway to a bitter smile. What would you even do with details, Elias? Ride back and shoot the sheriff? Burn the church down? Men like you come and go, always talking about justice, but justice doesn't mean much when you're a woman in a town like that. He didn't answer right away. The kettle began to hiss. I'm not a preacher, he said finally, and I ain't a hero, but I'm not leaving you out there to die. She studied him. The flicker of firelight caught the lines in his face, sharp cheekbones, weathered brow, a thin scar running along his jaw. A man carved by years, not vanity. There was strength in him, but more than that, there was stillness, like a man who had learned to carry weight without making a sound. You're one of them, she said. The four. He didn't confirm it. He didn't have to. Which one are you? She asked. The quiet one, he said. That made her laugh. It surprised them both. He poured tea into 2 chipped mugs and handed her one. She sipped it cautiously, grimacing at the bitter root taste. You sure you didn't mean to poison me? She said. Not yet, he muttered. She didn't smile again, but something eased in her shoulders. The wind rattled the shutters. Night thickened like syrup beyond the windows. Somewhere outside, a coyote howled. Elias sipped his tea, one eye on the door. He hadn't expected visitors tonight, but trouble rarely made appointments. I need to leave soon, Mara said, suddenly. Where would you go? She hesitated. Don't know. Just away. He nodded. You will, when you're strong enough. Don't treat me like a child. I'm not broken. I didn't say you were. She held his gaze. There was a fire there, beneath the layers of dust and exhaustion. A wildness he recognized, something too raw to be extinguished even by betrayal. You believe in revenge, Elias? I believe in consequences. Same thing, she said. The door creaked open before he could respond. A figure stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black coat dusted from the trail. His hat hung low over his eyes, and one hand rested casually on the pistol at his hip. Elias stood slowly, not alarmed, not welcoming. James, he said. Brother, the man replied. Mara sat up straighter. She hadn't known Elias had a brother, much less one who looked like he'd ridden out of a bounty poster. James removed his hat, revealing dark eyes and a scar above one brow. He looked at Mara first, then back at Elias. You picked a hell of a time to take in strays. She's not a stray. She's wanted. By cowards. James stepped further inside, closing the door behind him. The room felt smaller, instantly tighter. Town's stirring, he said. Posters went up yesterday. Sheriff's got a posse riding in 2 days. They'll come here first. Elias nodded. Let them. James glanced at Mara again. She worth dying for? Mara stood. Her legs shook, but she stayed up. I'm still in the room, you know. James tilted his head. Ma'am. She crossed her arms. You a rancher like your brother? I used to be a lot of things. James turned back to Elias. Look, I didn't ride all this way to argue. The others want to know where you stand. You disappear for 3 years, then show up harboring a fugitive? That paints a target. Not just for you, but for us. I never asked you to follow me. You left us no choice. Silence stretched. Mara felt caught between 2 wolves, different in voice, similar in weight. She stepped between them, her voice sharp. I'll be gone by morning. I'm not dragging anyone else into this. You won't make it 10 miles, Elias said. Then I'll die trying. You already tried that, he snapped. She flinched, not from the words, but the anger behind them. He caught himself, looked away. James watched the exchange, then exhaled. You both got fire, he said. Fine. I'll ride back and tell the others. But if the posse comes, you'd better be ready. This ain't a town fight anymore. They'll want blood. He tipped his hat, nodded once to Mara, and left as silently as he'd arrived. The door shut. The house felt emptier. Mara sat back down, her breath shallow. You think he's right? She asked. Doesn't matter. Why not? Because we don't run for men like that. We outlast them. He took her cup, refilled it, and handed it back. Rest tonight, he said. Tomorrow we train. Train? You ever fired a gun? Once. Hit a fence post. Good. Fence posts don't shoot back. She looked at him for a long moment. Then softly, Why do you care what happens to me, Elias? He didn't speak for a long time. The fire popped once. Because I knew someone once, he said finally. She was blamed for things she didn't do. People strung her up because it was easier than facing their own guilt. I wasn't fast enough then. I won't make that mistake again. Mara didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. The fire burned lower. Outside, the wind settled into silence. In the stillness, a plan began to form, not of escape but return, not of running but standing. Her body was bruised, but her will was coiling again, like a whip waiting to crack. She wasn't a widow. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't barren. She was alive, and that, she realized, terrified them more than anything. Elias glanced at her once before turning in for the night. She remained by the fire, watching embers drift into the chimney. Tomorrow would bring guns, perhaps blood, but tonight she allowed herself one small truth. The morning arrived not with birdsong or sunshine, but with a low gray sky that pressed against the hills like a warning. Mara stood at the edge of the yard, holding the Colt revolver Elias had given her. The grip felt unfamiliar, too heavy in her hand. She raised it anyway, arms locked, eyes narrowed on the empty bottle sitting on the fence post. "Breathe out when you shoot," Elias said from behind her. "Don't overthink it." "I'm not." Then stop flinching. She pulled the trigger. The sound cracked through the still air, like a whip. The bottle didn't budge. She blinked at the recoil, her arm stinging. "You missed," Elias said calmly. "I noticed. Try again." She fired once more. This time the bottle shattered, glass tumbling to the dry dirt. "Better. Still too slow. You've been training for less than an hour, Mara." She lowered the revolver. "That's 1 hour more than I ever got in that town." He said nothing, only walked over and reset another bottle on the post. His movements were precise, deliberate, like a man who'd done everything 1,000 times and hated each repetition just a little. "Did you teach the others to shoot?" she asked. "Only the ones who lived long enough to learn." That answer sat like a stone in her gut. She watched him for a moment, his back turned to her as he adjusted the target. The silence between them held weight, not the awkward kind, but the kind that asked for trust without demanding it. "I never wanted to fight," she said. He didn't look at her. Nobody does, until it finds them. "I was going to be a midwife," she said suddenly. "That was the plan. I studied with an old woman in the next town over. I memorized herbs, learned how to wrap cord, how to pray without panicking. I thought, if I couldn't have children, maybe I could help someone else bring theirs into the world." She looked down at her boots. But it wasn't enough. Not for them. They wanted me to be useful their way. Elias finally turned. "And what way is that?" "Married, obedient, pregnant. I refused the deacon's son. Twice. That's all it took." He came back, toward her, the wind tugging lightly at his coat. "They didn't just want you gone," he said. "They wanted you erased." She nodded. "Well," he said, "now you're here, and you don't owe them silence anymore." He handed her the revolver again. "Shoot." She raised it. This time, she hit the bottle clean through the middle. They spent the next hours in silence, broken only by the crack of gunfire and the rustle of dry leaves. Mara's hands blistered. Her aim improved. Her shoulders stopped trembling. By noon, she could reload without looking. Later, while she cleaned the gun at the porch steps, James returned. Dust trailed behind his horse like smoke. He dismounted with a grunt and tossed his saddlebag near the door. "They're riding tomorrow," he said. 20 men. Maybe more." Elias stood, arms crossed. "When?" "Before dawn. They'll try to surround the canyon. Think they've got you cornered." "Let them think it." Mara looked between them. "We can't take 20 armed men," she said. "We don't have to," James replied. "We just have to last longer than they expect. Long enough to make them rethink who the hunted are." "They'll burn this place," she said. "They'll kill you both." James smiled grimly. "Let them try." She rose, fury rising with her. "You think this is noble? Letting them come so you can die, with a gun in your hand?" "No," Elias said, "but running means they win." Again. James removed his hat, and ran a hand through his hair. If we run, we die tired. If we fight, maybe we die proud. Mara looked away, jaw tight. What if I leave tonight, she said. Slip out before they arrive. Maybe they'll follow me instead. Elias stepped forward. You're not a decoy. I'm not afraid to be bait. You should be, James said. They won't just catch you. They'll make an example of you. That's what men like them do. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of mesquite and old sweat. James knelt beside his saddlebag, unfastening the straps. Inside was a bundle of sticks wrapped in cloth. He unrolled it to reveal a scatter of old dynamite caps and wire. Where the hell did you get that? Elias asked. Mining shack outside Alvido. Abandoned, but not empty. Mara stepped back, eyes wide. You want to blow them up? No, just scare them enough to make them doubt. Men lose their nerve faster when their boots shake. They spent the evening laying out plans. Elias mapped the ridge line with stones on the floor. James rigged a few of the traps, explaining them with the precision of a man too familiar with explosives. Mara memorized the sequence. 3 paths in, 2 choke points, 1 fallback. By the time dusk arrived, they were exhausted and silent. Mara sat by the fire, legs folded beneath her, watching shadows crawl up the walls. Elias poured water into a basin and handed her a cloth. Wash up, he said. You'll sleep better. She dipped the cloth and scrubbed her face. The cold stung, but she welcomed the sharpness. Do you believe in redemption? She asked. Elias considered that. I believe people do awful things, he said, but I also believe they can choose not to. Doesn't mean they will. Do you think I need redemption? He met her eyes. No. She leaned back against the wall. Sometimes I wonder if I'm angry because of what they did, or because I didn't scream louder when they did it. You screamed enough, he said. They just weren't listening. Her throat tightened. It had been so long since anyone validated the storm inside her that she nearly didn't recognize the feeling. You're not broken, Mara, he said quietly. They're just afraid of women who survive. The fire snapped between them. Her fingers curled into fists. I want them to see me, she whispered. Not hiding. Not buried. I want them to look me in the eye and understand I'm still here. Then stand with us. Elias said. She nodded. The 3 of them slept in shifts. Elias on the porch, James by the door, Mara in the parlor with the loaded revolver beside her. At midnight, she woke to silence. She slipped outside, wrapped in Elias's old coat. The moon was high, thin, and distant. The wind whispered low across the grass. James was sitting by the fence, a rifle across his lap. Couldn't sleep, he asked. No, me neither. She sat beside him. They didn't speak for a while. Then, you ever wonder why some folks get spared? All the time. What answer do you come up with? James looked out across the darkness. Maybe the ones who survive aren't the lucky ones. Maybe they're the ones meant to finish something. Mara let that settle. I'm not a warrior, James. You don't have to be. Just don't blink. He stood, stretched his legs. You'll do fine. He walked back toward the house. She stayed a little longer, staring into the night. When she finally returned inside, Elias was waiting by the window. They'll be here by dawn, he said. She nodded. Then let them come. The first shot came just before sunrise, a sharp crack that split the silence wide open. Mara ducked, instinctively, heart thundering in her chest. The sky had just started to glow, brushing the horizon with pale orange, but the serenity didn't last. More gunfire followed, closer now, echoing off the canyon walls like thunder chasing lightning. They're early, James muttered, peering through the slats in the boarded-up window. Damn cowards must have ridden through the night. Elias grabbed his rifle and nodded toward the porch. Positions. Now. Mara followed, clutching the revolver so tight her knuckles ached. Her breath was ragged in her throat, but her hands were steady. She wasn't the same woman who'd clawed at Desert Soil days ago, screaming through sand and blood. That girl was gone, left behind in the dust. They took cover. James behind the shed, Elias prone on the ridge line above the house, and Mara crouched just beyond the porch, behind an overturned trough they'd reinforced with slabs of metal. She could see shadows moving between the trees, rough outlines of men on horseback, creeping like wolves. 20 at least, maybe more. Her mouth was dry. Sweat clung to her back, though the morning was still cool. Every instinct screamed to run. But she didn't move. She waited. Then Elias fired the first shot. A man tumbled from his horse, hit the ground hard, and didn't rise. The others answered instantly. Shots lit up the clearing, bullets biting into wood and earth, splinters flying. The air burned with smoke and panic. Horses reared, men shouted. Chaos bloomed. Mara stayed low, counting her breath, waiting for the right moment. When she heard boots pound the porch behind her, she sprang up and fired. The man staggered back, dropping his rifle. She didn't wait to see if he fell. She ducked again, shifted to her right, flanked the next angle. They'd planned for this, the dynamite, the traps, the choke points. James had strung wires near the north fence. She heard one snap. Boom! A burst of fire flared skyward, followed by screaming. Dirt rained down, and through the smoke Mara saw two more of them on the ground, one limping away, the other crawling. James yelled from somewhere behind the barn. Left flank. Coming around. Elias's voice followed. I see him. Hold your line. Mara turned, eyes scanning the trees. 3 riders broke through the brush, thundering toward the house, rifles raised. She aimed. Fired. Missed the first shot. The second hit a rider in the shoulder, knocking him sideways. The horse veered riderless. The other 2 kept coming. Too fast. Too close. She dropped to one knee, bracing for the worst. A crack from Elias's rifle sent one tumbling, and before the last could react, James appeared from the side, slamming into him with a full body tackle that took both men into the dirt. They wrestled, dust swirling, until James got the upper hand, blade to the man's throat, quick and brutal. It was savage, and necessary. More gunfire, more shouts. The ground felt alive with noise, like it was vibrating under her boots. Then everything changed. Smoke drifted low through the trees, cloaking the attackers, making targets harder to see. A second group advanced from the rear, finding a path they hadn't accounted for. Shots rang out, close, too close. James shouted again, but this time in pain. Mara's heart seized. She sprinted across the open yard, bullets whizzing past her ears. She found James half covered in blood, clutching his side. You're hit. He grimaced, nodding. Got me clean. Rib or lung? Can't tell. Don't move. He chuckled darkly. Don't plan on it. She tore part of her shirt and pressed it against the wound. Stay with me. I'm not leaving you, girl. The tremble in his voice betrayed the strength in his words. Suddenly, another figure loomed behind them. Mara turned, gun raised. Too late. The man grabbed her by the hair, yanked her up. You're the witch they buried, he growled, eyes wild with hatred. Should have stayed in the dirt. She kicked out, catching him in the shin. He didn't flinch. His knife glinted in the pale light. Then a shot rang out. His head jerked back, and he dropped like a stone. Elias stood behind him, gun smoking. You all right, he asked. Mara nodded, shaking, then knelt again beside James. He needs help. Elias's face hardened. We've got minutes, maybe less. We fall back to the house. Together, they half-dragged, half-carried James inside, laying him out by the hearth. Blood pooled beneath him, soaking into the floorboards. I'll cover the windows, Elias said. You keep him talking. I'm fine, James rasped. Don't bury me yet. You're not dying here, Mara whispered. Outside, the fight raged. Fewer gunshots now, more screams. The ambush had worked, but some of the riders remained, desperate men with nothing to lose. One of them kicked in the back door. Mara spun, shot him in the chest. Another came through the front. Elias tackled him, gun lost in the struggle. They rolled across the floor, trading punches, grunts of pain and effort filling the air. The man grabbed a shard of broken glass, slashed, blood sprayed. Elias roared, grabbed the man by the collar and slammed his head into the fireplace stone until he stopped moving. He staggered up, hand pressed his ribs. You're hurt, Mara said. He wiped blood from his mouth. Not enough. A distant shout called from outside. They're falling back. Then a final panic cry. It's not worth it. Pull back. Hoofbeats thundered. Retreat. Silence followed. The wind returned gentle now, the sky fully lit. Morning had come. Mara stood frozen in the doorway, looking out over the field. The ground was littered with bodies, smoke, broken weapons, and, in the middle of it, still standing, was the house that should have burned. James coughed weakly behind her. Elias leaned against the doorframe, bloodied and panting. They'd survived. No glory, no celebration, but survival. Later, once the dead had been buried, once James's wound was cleaned and Elias's ribs wrapped, they sat around the fire. No one spoke at first, the weight of it all pressed heavy in the air. Then James spoke. What now? Mara looked into the flames. We rebuild. Elias raised an eyebrow. Rebuild what? Whatever we want, she said. This place. A life. A reason. James chuckled, then winced. Sounds ambitious. She glanced between them. They tried to bury me, tried to erase me. I let them, for a while, but not anymore. Elias gave her a look that bordered on pride. You've changed. No, she said. I just remembered who I was before they tried to rewrite me. Outside, wind moved through the grass like a whisper. Elias stood. There's a town to the east. Honest folks might be willing to trade for supplies. We'll need lumber, medicine, bullets. Mara nodded. I'll ride with you. James groaned. Leave me out of it. I'm staying right here and healing like an old man. Elias grinned. You are an old man. James flipped him off without looking up. They laughed soft and tired. That night, Mara sat on the porch alone. The stars overhead were sharp, cold, brilliant. She thought of the pit, the silence, the cruelty of being erased. And then she thought of the blood, the fire, the grit, the way her hands no longer shook when she held a gun, the way Elias had said her name, not as a burden, but as a person. She whispered into the night, I was never yours to destroy. A gust of wind answered, warm and full of promise. The west was vast, brutal, and unforgiving.